Welcome to the Inspirational Leaders Series, a collection of short interviews with sharp, impactful people because the business world needs more refreshing people like them. My name is 𝘊𝘃𝘊𝘳𝘊𝘁. I am a leadership and executive coach for design leaders and leadership teams, and I help them maximize their impact and elevate the stature of design in their organizations. And today, I am really excited to have a conversation with Ricardo De La Cruz, who is Director of Information Technology at Barbarian, and he is also a mentor for young people in tech through Mentor for Life. He is an established tech leader who is bridging the gap between technology innovation and service excellence. And I'm very happy to have you here, Ricardo. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much, 𝘊𝘃𝘊𝘁.
Yeah, of course. And the whole goal of this conversation is to learn about how you have been shaped and instructed as a leader through your life experiences and how that has shaped your point of view about leadership. So I would love to start with just learning a little bit about maybe one or two of the key experiences that you would say shaped how you lead today.
Wow, that's there's so many I can dive into, but one that does come to mind is a very recent one, actually. In my last company, I did work for a leader, the CEO of the company, that was very, very helpful and very supportive. Many of us know that it's good to have a very supportive leader, but what I really appreciated the most is that he gave me the opportunity to be myself. And at the time, I didn't realize how important that was. I having the space to really just come as who I am and show up as myself, as my full self, be supported for it, really helped me shape my creativity in ways to be very innovative and deliver to the business as well as my team. And this was only probably maybe 3-4 years ago, but it's something that has definitely shaped the evolution of the type of leader I am today.
And how does that translate into how you lead now?
That was a very helpful way for me to see it on the receiving end and to understand that this is something that people do need. People like the space to be creative. Creativity creates a lot of great things, especially in the field of tech, which is the teams that I lead. And as far as giving that space and that safe space, what I like to call, it's been very helpful to bring out the best out of my team members. My team members, I see them do a lot of great things that they forever teach me. And just things that we've been able to do as a powerhouse of a collective minds to deliver to the business. And for that, having that experience has allowed me to continue to write that in my unwritten script of leadership, and something that I'll forever take with me and continue to build upon.
Cool. So it's like your experience of being led in that way. You were like, ooh, this feels really good. And not only does it feel good, but it's impacting how I'm showing up. And so that's something that you have brought to the way that you lead, because you basically want to replicate what was good about that for you.
100%. And I just think that one of my favorite things about, just working and being creative is when new ideas are born and you're like, how did that happen? Like, where did it come from? And it's great to see it when it's happening within yourself. But for me, it's even better when I see it happening on my teams.
Well, okay. So let's dig into, your leadership style and approach a little bit more. In my coaching work, when I'm working with individuals or with teams, sometimes we'll do work around clarifying what is their driving purpose, like what's the kind of impact that they want to have in the world with each other. And I think about that in relationship to how we lead too. So I'm curious if you have some kind of driving purpose as a leader. Like what is the impact that you are looking to have?
Well, my leadership is very centered on human focus. And while that was not the most popular thing to talk about in the old school world of leadership, I'm really glad that it's now becoming a center of conversations for a lot of leaders. I like to be very focused on the human themselves, to make sure that I'm building them, making sure that they're growing as a person, that they're able to see the goals and reach the goals that they want, as well as understand the impact that they're giving to the business. No matter what role anybody on my team or anyone around the business is doing, they're making an impact. And I think that that's a very important thing for anyone to recognize. I show up for myself and my team because I know what my purpose is, which is to deliver to the business as well as to serve my team and help them grow, and as we all can grow together and foster that relationship. The relationship is very important. on that side. Without the relationship, we're all just going to be robots, which means no creativity, no innovation, and whatnot. So that is something that is very important for my leadership. Everything as far as DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, ESG, environmental, social governance. These are things that are very important. And as we know with these upcoming generations, this is something that they pay attention to and they will throw their money at. So this is a business case more than ever.
So you were being a human-centered leader before it was popular to be a human-centered leader. That's what it sounds like.
Not to be anything else. It was hard not to be, because I just didn't have it in me to be anything other than that. So.
Yeah. Well, and I know that to be true from my interactions with you too. Okay, so I just building on this theme then, what is something that you once believed about leadership that you have changed your mind about?
Oh, wow. Well, I'm going to give you two answers, but I'm going to give you one really short one that doesn't really need an explanation. That's why I'm going to squeeze it in there. Because this is something that I think all of us collectively know and should know, is micromanaging and authoritarian type of leadership is really not helpful when it comes to fostering creativity, relationships, innovation, productivity. And that's the part that I don't think needs much explanation, because I know you and I and a lot of the world fortunately agrees with that. But as far as something that I've changed my mind about, as far as leadership, I would say just being able to put your flaws to the front. When I was younger, in my younger tech days, I've always viewed my leaders in a certain type of way, in a certain pedestal, where I wasn't criticizing them as much in the beginning. And, in a very junior mind, it's kind of like, oh, the leaders are flawless. They make no mistakes. They know everything, right? And unfortunately, that's not true. Not unfortunately, actually, fortunately, that's not true, because no one's perfect. And what I've learned is that showing up as your full self, and putting your flaws to the front and being very transparent with your teams and people around you allows you to build trust. And that's what's really helped me with a lot of my tech teams, as well as us interacting with other business departments, is having that trust, knowing that we're going to figure it out, even if we don't know the answer right away, knowing that there's going to be a way where we're going to create some great, powerful results together if we're doing cross-departmental work. And even just the team, just knowing that we can make the mistakes and we can have those teachable moments. That is something that I factor into my leadership, is making mistakes and having the ability to learn from it. And I hold myself accountable for that. So when it comes to being transparent, saying this is something I do not know, being upfront about that has been something that has really worked in my reward as a leader and as a colleague and as a peer, that I did not know was such a thing in my younger years, but it's really worked out for me, and I'm not getting rid of that.
Well, and it sounds like there's layers in there. Like, there's, as a leader, you embrace being transparent. It sounds like acknowledging when you're wrong about something, being transparent about mistakes that you might make, because I think the implication is it makes it safe for everybody to do that.
For sure.
Yeah. And then, but there's another piece too, I think, when you started out, which is like, you said don't hold your leaders on a pedestal. And I think the other piece of that was, and be willing to communicate with your leaders if you see something that should be addressed, as opposed to silent.
That is,
am I right?
Like, yes, 100%. And it's like sharing my brain, because it helps everyone to be upfront when something's going to happen. I want to let my leader know all the news, whether it's the good news or bad news. He has to know this, and it's important for me to know this as well. I'm with my teams to make sure that I'd rather correct something that can be a foreseeable downfall versus find out after the fact because they were too afraid or intimidated. And having that type of safe space and putting the flaws to the front allows people to see the human side of you. And it really has helped a lot of people be very upfront with me. That's the kind of tone I like to set in any relationship, whether it's professional, social, or anything outside of work, is let's be transparent, let's be real. And, we're all human. Let's have that, every so often.
Well, and I mean, I have to say, I think that what you're talking about is actually pretty brave, because there are a lot of leaders who are nervous about getting feedback from their reports, or that would rather not hear dissension. But I think that you're advocating for the opposite. And what would you say the benefit of showing up in that way is? Why is it worth taking that risk as a leader?
It's definitely worth the risk just because it builds trust. Most importantly, it does a lot of things, and it's a lot of great things that it rewards to the leader. But the trust is the most important part. As a leader, you do need the trust of your colleagues, your peers, and your teams. So it's really important to, for example, if I sign up for a job, I was hired for that job for a reason. So I do have the qualifications and the skills and the experience to the job. But there's going to be gaps, and there's going to be things that I do not know that other colleagues and peers and teammates are going to fill in those gaps. So there's nothing wrong with being upfront about that, because we can't know everything. If we did, then we wouldn't hire anybody, right? We would just do it ourselves. But yeah, I think the trust is the biggest foundation as to the benefit of being upfront about these things.
Okay. And so trust, it's a way of building trust, and that ultimately affects relationship, which affects the way that you work together and what you can create together, I think is the thread there. Yeah.
Exactly. And not losing confidence again. And that's something as leaders, we have to be confident. And that confidence comes with owning what your gaps of knowledge is. It's just like, there's what you don't know is totally fine, and you'll figure it out. You're a leader. There's a reason you're in the position that you're in. So that's a very big point.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're also talking about then being, it's like you're hired to be, I mean, in the case of management, a leader of a team, not necessarily to have expertise in all areas. So there will be gaps, and that kind of comes with the territory. I always think of it's like one of the skill sets that you need in management and leadership is really good problem solving skills. So I have a gap. How do I solve that gap? Is it hiring someone? Is it getting outside expertise? Is it, whatever? Yeah. Interesting. Well, okay. So another thing that I know is important in the world of leadership is getting people on board, right? Getting them on board with decisions, with strategies that you have in mind, plans, ideas. And I'm wondering what you have learned about influence in your leadership journey.
Influence is so important, as you and I and a lot of leaders listening to this would know. Just getting the teams to follow your lead and trust your lead. And I'm going to put a big poster that says trust in front of me because I'm keep referencing it. But the trust is really important and it's what builds the loyalty. And with all my teams that I've had to develop the relationships with each team member, it's really been based on trust. It's been based on them not wanting to disappoint the team entirely, as well as myself. And I've found that that's the way I've gotten the best results and the loyalty from the teams, because I've referenced earlier about the lack of progress that their authoritarian as well as micromanaging does. The old school way, at least the world that I came up in as a young tech, was that, that kind of micromanaging would keep somebody in line, quote unquote. And I'm saying that very sarcastically. But that's not true. I know that I produced my best work when I've had the freedom of space to do what I needed to do, but I was very committed because my leader influenced me to really see the reason why I'm doing the work that I do. What is my work to getting recognition for the good work that I've done, even in recognizing my growth throughout my journey of my profession. Just those kind of things have always kept me loyal, where I was like, I do not want to disappoint this person. I want to support her in everything she tells me. I want to make sure I don't let her down. Those are things that are very important that I've seen in my favor as a leader, building that loyalty and their commitment to whatever project, whatever. And I've also developed a mission for my team. And these are things that I bring in every team that I enter, is a mission. So why are we here? Yes, we do tech work and we solve tech problems, but what does that really do? And helping the teams understand that and connect those dots have really worked in their favor, and my favor the most as a leader.
Well, Yeah, it's interesting. So loyalty is a tool that, I mean, and you cultivate that through some of the things you've been talking about, like transparency and trust, building trust. And that when people are loyal, I guess that what you're saying is then they're more likely to get on board with the direction that you want to take things, for example. But also you talked about mission as this, like, I think of mission as like the organizing principle of the team, you know? And to take that even a step further, like making sure they know their relationship to that mission, like what's the part that they play and how does it, so it doesn't stay in the abstract. Yeah, interesting. So we've talked about transparency and trust and loyalty and mission. A thing we haven't talked about is the demands of leadership. So many of the leaders that I know and work with are juggling a lot. There are high stakes, a lot coming at them. And so a thing that I work with people on and I think about a lot is energy management. And, so that you and others are able to show up as in your optimal state as much as possible. And I'm wondering how you think about that and how you play with that amidst the demands of business that you experience.
For sure. And I think the one thing we all know and the unspoken rule is that one style of leadership does not fit all. But what has definitely helped me is to manage all those types of energy. And there's definitely going to be times of stress and whatnot is, again, going back into having that trust with the team. And to kind of go a little bit deeper into that to answer your question is really just understanding that, especially working in tech, we're going to have a lot of unplanned moments. We're going to have a lot of things failing at the time. That's why we're here. And we're also going to have to pre-plan for those things to not happen in the future. So this is something that's a bit of our DNA in our industry. Having to manage stress in the best way is what I think makes a great quality leader. Being able to keep your cool and being able to understand. And of course, everything's going to test you as a leader, whether it's your upward management, whether it's your team, whether it's another department. There's going to be something that's going to test your patience. And remaining and keeping that patience is very key. And that's why we're leaders, right? Because we know to put our emotions aside when we need to and use it in its best ability if we need to drive our energy. But at the same time, we understand that there is a time and place for a lot of things. So for that reason, we have to channel our energy to the right places. So things are going to come up unexpectedly. One of the books I have in my shelf behind me is 𝘊𝘳𝘶 Leader by a professor who's also a friend of mine. And his thing that he always references is about the volatile situations that a leader goes through. And this is what makes a great quality leader. We all have different ways to deal with it. But as long as we're not panicking and running away and throwing our arms in the air and waving the white flag, we figure it out. That's what we do. And I'm going to keep, the key word today is trust, because I keep mentioning it a lot. But the real reason why that's very important for me and my experience is that, my direct reports, my management team, those who have reported directly to me, they understand how I do the work. They understand how we can work together. So when they see that something is potentially high energy, high stress, they know how to help remediate that with me. They also know how to prevent things. They also know the vision and the purpose of how we do things as a team. So for that reason, they've been very helpful in filling in those gaps that I couldn't do for any of the things that do come up. So I gave you a very loaded answer there. But
well, so, I mean, it sounds like you, in part, your team, here's what's interesting. It sounds like you don't see that as something that you alone manage. Like that the team, what you didn't say that explicitly, but the
Right.
fact that you talk about like the transparency and that your team sort of is like recognizing when something's high energy and then they shift how they're working to adjust for the different energetic need. I feel very California in this moment. Also,
so that's on brand.
I love California too. But energy is, your reservoir of energy is a very real thing and absolutely affects how you lead and affects how a team works. So it sounds to me like in part you share ownership with your team, and that's sort of based on the relationship dynamic that you have created with them. Am I hearing that correctly?
That is correct, and that definitely speaks more to the current team that I'm working with. You know, we have such a great dynamic, and these are the type of relationships that are super valuable, that are hard to find and take time to build. And why I mentioned earlier to that answer was that not one style of leadership fits all, is that this is currently evolving. So in the next team that I've ever worked with, it's very possible that it will change, that I will have a different relationship with the team, depending on what the position is, what the company is, what the industry is. I was speaking more to the current state, but it's actually working. It's one of those super invaluable moments that you get to have, and once you have it, you cherish it. But it's definitely something that takes time to build that type of relationship.
Mm-hmm. Well, and there were two other pieces in there. There was, it sounds like your mindset about leadership in part helps you with managing your energy as a leader, meaning you embrace that part of your role is like, it's like, I don't know, it's like if there's a dial of like, my energy needs to go up because we have an intense project or situation, a fire that we've got to go out, like deal with. But, and I can use, like, I think you said emotion, like to help with boosting energy. There's a concept in neuroscience called emotional contagion. And it's a very real thing, that the way that you are presenting is impacting other people and where they're at. But also that, you know, you just kind of know, like, I need to also be able to keep my emotions in check at certain times. And like, it's kind of, I don't know, this dial is like in my head as you're talking.
Yeah, that's a great point. Like, I think sometimes in the workforce, emotion is looked down upon. And unfortunately, since we're all humans, we can't control that. Emotions are going to happen whether we try to hide them or not. So I say that there's nothing wrong with emotions, because emotions drive our energy. It's just the way we channel it and keep it in check is what's really important.
Interesting. Yeah, so it's how we channel it. Oh, super interesting conversation, Ricardo. Thank you. I really appreciate you being here and sharing and just learning more about you. So thank you for that.
Thank you for having me. It's always fun talking to you.
Yeah. And for the rest of you who are listening in, if you are interested in hearing more interviews with inspiring people like Ricardo, then you can find those on my website, which is teresabrazen.com. And thank you for joining us. Thanks, Ricardo.
Thank you.
All right.